happy to be here, and what a lovely night to kick off this week with Robert Morningsky. We're going to be continuing the discussion on the divine feminine. It is such a pleasure to have you back here tonight, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good, thank you, and thank you for having me back. It's my honor. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for being here. Why do you think it is such a hot topic? I mean, is it just simply asking the questions?
Well, I think what is happening is that I hope I do not disturb too many of the male listeners, but I don't think anyone would dispute the fact that the world is male-oriented, it is male-dominated. The philosophies, the disciplines, and the major religions are all, again, oriented towards the male and emphasize the male power, their presence, and to criticize by saying, excuse me, folks, but the male domination of our society and our religions is actually relatively recent considering the history of humankind. We've actually lived under a world where the goddess, the divine feminine, was the dominant influence for literally anywhere from 30 to 50,000 years, whereas male domination is only in the last 2,000. Unfortunately, we live in a world that depends and is built upon male dominance. And I will argue, both on my website and hopefully over the course of these programs, that that is why we have these problems. It's because it is male-oriented and male-dominated, really doesn't consider the feminine. And I will take it a step further and say that the future of humankind really depends heavily on women leading and guiding, with men executing and making those things happen. So we're disrupting, by putting material out on the divine feminine, we're disrupting the very foundation of what I will term the civilized world.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there's already a little chatter on the text chat here. Now, we're not trying to erase the male aspect. We're not,
absolutely not,
bashing men or male or their role or anything. This isn't a female or is better than the masculine, etc. This is nothing about that. We're just trying to shed some light on, oops, there might be something missing, besides what we've been taught in the current power structure the last several thousand years. There's obviously something is missing.
Well, yes, and let me also state that I have obviously had to study the mother goddess religions and even some of the more contemporary interpretations. And for example, I think this is a prime example. The male-dominated religions have as their Holy Trinity Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Mirroring that concept is the Mother Goddess religion, which proclaims the Mother-Daughter Crone as the Holy Trinity. I actually am going to present on my website, and I will argue that the original Trinity was the Divine Feminine and a male and a female. So the Divine Trinity is Goddess, Priestess, and Priest. So I am not in any way dismissing masculine divinity, the male divinity. What I'm saying is that there is a very, very powerful feminine divine that we simply have ignored and suppressed, and we are, I apologize, but I'm going to say it, we are endangering our future by ignoring the feminine divine. I will argue that the problems that we have today, and I can quote study after study after study, that shows that it is male dominance that is posing us the problems that we have. So, no, I am not dismissing masculine divinity in any way. I am not dismissing the participation of males in the divine feminine rituals and ceremonies. I am saying, however, that the divine feminine is older, and I believe it has greater influence and can guide us to a much better future than the path that we've been taking for the last few thousand years.
Absolutely. I agree. Now, and I just want to make clear, we're not trying to erase God or even change your view of God or Jesus Christ or whoever you worship. But come on, nobody can deny that the female energy or the divine has been completely erased from all of our current power structures, has it not?
Absolutely. Though there are token references in many of the sacred scriptures and in the Bible, in fact, they have been transformed from their original status and their original scripture. So the problem is that we focus too much on the male. Not that there aren't benefits. Obviously, men have done quite a bit for humankind, but we have suppressed, we've denied, and we've prevented women from contributing at least an equal amount. And that is just, I just find it so horrendous and so disheartening. And I have to tell you that with apologies, I did not start out in my research and in my journey in my life to reach for the divine feminine or sacred ecstasy and those shamanic rituals that revolve around the woman. My career began years and years ago as a child when I heard stories about the star beings that my elders, the native elders, when they gathered and told stories, they talked about star beings. They talked about the Hopi Kachinas, the Apache Gons, the Navajo, the Diné Yebiche. And so star beings was my first passion. It was, okay, I need to know more about them. I need to know where they came from, what they did. And every religion, every civilization always in its religions or its disciplines talks about star beings. And that's where I started. But in my journey, and it's been global, I've been probably the most fortunate man to visit the sacred sites across the globe and to be able to participate in both ceremonies and speak with elders. Little by little, I kept finding there was an older way of life. There was an older religion. There was an older civilization. And years ago in college, I wrote a series of papers, one in particular, the Terra Papers, which used the information, the archaeological data available at that time. And I tried to tell the story of star beings and how they influenced humankind globally, not just in Native America, but across the globe. Now I found I didn't go back far enough. The Terra Papers that I wrote don't reach far enough back into our history. But as I reached back and I found what I consider, at least at this point, and maybe in 10 years it'll change, the oldest religion, the oldest celebration of humankind, the place where the connection between the stars and Earth, where star beings and human beings, where the divine and humankind made contact, this place I have found, and the revelations have just started to spill out. But in the connection between the divine and the human, something happened. It suddenly occurred to me, if there is a divine being, whether you want to choose the divine being as a god or goddess or the creator, whatever identity one wishes to assign, we are remarkable human beings. We are remarkable creatures. I spent years studying the human brain and the potential that it has, and the human body and the potential that it has. But if there is a divine creator who has given us life and given us the spirit and the tools to accomplish things, why then would this creator turn around and lay this, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not enjoy this natural emotion within you, you shouldn't use your body this way? It made no sense to have a creator that gives you all these gifts and then turns around and said, don't do that, thou shalt not, and thou shalt not. Yeah. And what I found, and by going back to the oldest religion so far that I've been able to locate, the ancient religion that said, thou shalt use the natural emotion, thou shalt use the gifts of the body that I gave you, and the mind, and the heart, and the spirit, that religion revolved around the goddess. And so that made more sense. Again, I did not deny the male divinity because it does play a role, but
yes.
it just made a lot more sense that whoever created us would then say, use what I gave you, use the gifts, the emotion and all that, rather than a creator in a book that says, thou shalt not do this and you can't do this, and it just didn't make any sense. So I began chasing a path looking for star beings. Ultimately, what I found was a connection between star beings and humankind, but revelations about who the creator was and who the most likely person to manifest the divine is a woman. And there is physical evidence, there is biological evidence, there is physiological evidence that if there is such a thing as a divine manifestation on the earth, with apologies, gentlemen, with apologies all of those who believe devoutly in a male religion, physiologically, biologically, a woman's body appears to manifest the divine more so than a man's body.
Wow.
How's that for trouble?
Wow, yeah. So physical and biological evidence of this, do you mind elaborating on that, please?
Okay. Perhaps the simplest way to start is by asking, and I will do this delicately, the question is, why do men have nipples? There is no physiological reason for a man to have a nipple. Now, there are some people that say, well, you know, it's an erogenous zone and it assists in arousal and intimacy and those kind of things. But that's not why we were born with it. Physiologically, there's only one reason. And what I discovered, and what all the studies, if you look carefully, what they tell us, is that in the first 6 weeks, every fetus is born as a female. It is only after approximately those 6 weeks that there begins to be an influx of chemicals and hormones and other things that begin to change the fetus from a female into a male. So every single human being on this planet was originally, in its first 6 weeks, a female. Through the change of hormones and chemicals, some of us became males. So immediately, I mean, that's just one small part. We then go to look at the size, for example, of the human egg and compared to the size of the human sperm. The egg itself is approximately 2,500 times bigger than the human sperm. When the two unite, and there's a whole, topic for discussion there, but assuming the traditional explanation that the two unite and they form a fetus, what we are talking about is 2,500 parts being the female egg, one part the male egg.
Wow.
And thus we're born 2,500 to 1 stuff from the female versus one piece from the male. And we could go on and on. There are numerous studies. I would recommend a book, The Natural Superiority of Women, but the author escapes me for the moment. But he goes on to explain that there are numerous physiological, biological functions and aspects of the female body that are, in fact, superior, meaning that they function better than the male body does. So, physiologically, biologically, women's bodies can adapt to more, they can handle more, they are more efficient, there is a greater brain to body weight ratio in the female than there is in the male, and even though today males tend to be stronger and larger, in many of the oldest studies, and I can talk about them later, in many of the oldest studies, it showed that women were just as active. They were out there hunting. The entire concept of the hunter-gatherer society where the woman stayed home and only the men went out hunting is inaccurate. because they have found both evidence and again, physiological evidence that demonstrates that the women were just as good out in the field.
You're saying that women were as strong as men and maybe perhaps even shared in the hunting and gathering?
Yes, absolutely. The problem that we have in the world today is that we often want to say this is superior or this is better. I'm not saying that that is the case. What I am saying is that women in their own way could do what men could not, and men could do what women could not. For example, there are numerous studies that have shown that the skeletal structures of women in what we would term the days of the caveman, that they suffered injuries as the same kind of injuries that men suffered, the broken arms or the injuries to the ribs or fractures to the skull. They demonstrated the same injuries in the skeletal structures. Women, again, would generally, just because of the physiological structure, would generally be a little bit smaller. But that also makes them much quicker. It makes them more agile. Men would be stronger. Mm-hmm. One of the arguments that has been used by traditional scholars, archaeologists, and anthropologists is that women stayed home because they had children or they were having their menstrual cycles and therefore the blood would attract prey and they couldn't, they would be endangering the hunt. And that has been shown not to be accurate. In even today's world, there are many female athletes who go out there and they train and they compete, and curiously, or perhaps that's just the way things are, they in fact lose their menstrual cycles, or it's reduced drastically so that the scent of blood for women who are out hunting would be severely restricted, if not disappear altogether. These women who were out there side by side with the male hunters were no more of a threat than the men themselves. What had occurred, however, is that some women, because they had children, or because perhaps they had an injury, a deformity, or perhaps they were smaller because of their genes, they did stay in camp, and they did stay behind, and they nurtured the children, and they took care of them. So ultimately what had happened was that you had two different castes, two different groups of women that were developing. You had the strong Amazon kind of hunter and gatherer, and then you had the woman who did stay home, who did take care of the children, and she, in fact, because she didn't need the musculature, she didn't need the physical skills, her body did become smaller, it did become weaker. And this is where the concept of the weaker sex came from. These were the women that stayed home. These were the women that took care of the children, took care of the camp, and in fact they did do the plant gathering and the food gathering at home. But history and anthropology has lost sight of the women hunters, those Amazon women who were out there competing and in many cases battling with other tribes if necessary. But that history has either been ignored, suppressed, lost. I don't know, and I'm not going to fault anthropologists or archaeologists. There just always seems to be, let us focus on the male. And the true Amazon huntress has disappeared. Now she's become a part of myth and legend. But in fact, back when humankind was evolving, she was an integral part of the survival of the tribe, of the society.
Wow. Well, okay, there's a lot of chatter here in the text chat. Let me ask you, well, first of all, gosh, how do I go about this? Let me ask you this. The divine feminine, one of the chatters claims that this is something to do This is pro-New World Order. It's the religion of the establishment elite that has something to do with Madame Blavatsky. And, well, it basically equates to New World Order psychotic Lucifer religion. The worship of serpents and snakes. I'm sorry. Can you comment on that?
I marvel.
Ask that.
I'm astonished. I just...
Yeah.
How one gets from discussing feminine divinity and to New World Order, and I forget. I'm familiar with Madame Blavatsky, but I have never quoted or used any of her works in any of my research. I encountered her early on and said, well, that's interesting, but it just simply doesn't answer the questions. To be accused of a New World Order is... It's absurd. I mean, we are talking... Oh, let me back up a second here. Research clearly demonstrates, and all the scholars have shown, that the first practice of what is known as shamanism began in Siberia, in Mongolia. And shamanism was about connecting with the other world, connecting with past ancestors who have passed on, and trying to affect and influence the weather and the environment, or at least trying to explain it. It was never about conquering the world. It was never about conquering other human tribes. It was about survival. It was about being able to live with the environment and to live with the nature, and in fact to live with other human beings. The people who toss up, and this one I won't apologize for, but people who toss up accusations like New World Order and all these other New Age, whatever words they want to use, that's very typical of people who simply can't address the actual research. They cannot comment on the archaeological evidence, they can't comment on the linguistic evidence, they can't comment on the historical evidence, so they resort to calling people names or to assigning these values, and they're absurd. I mean, I have no problem sitting and talking with someone or even debating history, archaeology, anthropology, linguistics, science, biology, quantum mechanics. I don't have any problem discussing the actual research. But as far as name-calling goes, that's someone who absolutely has lost control and cannot address the issue. So, gentlemen, ladies, if you want a name call, go right ahead. But it simply does not address the points that research and scholars have studied for literally thousands of years. It's a ridiculous... my goodness, what a ridiculous thing to do.
I'm having a hard time putting it together, too. I'm like going, okay, now, what did you say that I don't hear this at all? And I'm not discounting other people's perceptions at the same time. So if you do have something to say, I mean, and want to have a coherent conversation, please do call in. But I'm having a hard time following it, too. It's kind of weird, though. Every time you mention the divine feminine or suggest that, there might be something missing from the complete male-dominated hierarchy or power structure, then it's funny how the names fly, isn't it?
Well, it is, and
how does that equate to Lucifer worship? I don't get it. I'm really sorry. I don't get it, though.
Okay. This is one point that is used again and again, Lucifer worship, and there is a complete spin and misunderstanding of the entire concept of Lucifer and Satan, because usually that concept goes back to the Bible. And one of the things that I have tried to demonstrate in the lectures and the conferences that I've given, as well as what I will attempt to do on my website, if my website stays up, is that the word Satan, Satan, is actually of Hebrew origin. And that word does not mean devil, and it doesn't mean evil, it doesn't mean bad, all those connotations. That is not what the original meaning of the Hebrew word Satan or Satan means. It actually means adversary. It means the opponent of, the person or that entity that takes the other side of God. And when the male religions, including that in the Bible, when they began to usurp the old ways, when they began to take control, they found that their adversary was, in fact, the goddess. And so those people who worshiped the goddess, they were Satanists. They were worshiping the adversary of God. And so the names began to fly, the accusations, all of these, you did these evil things, you sacrificed your babies, you had the orgies, and they turned it into a completely negative thing. Anything that related to the divine feminine became negative. But here's a point I am going to make. Those who worshipped the goddess, those who followed the goddess, in fact, followed and worshipped the adversary of the male god. So that, in fact, Satan worshiper is not inaccurate linguistically, but it has been portrayed as evil and bad, and that's just because you're worshiping the divine feminine instead of the divine masculine. I marvel at the supposed claims of love and light and wonder and patience used by those who express devout faith in the Bible. And yet, the other day I heard about a Quran burning event that was going to take place in Florida. How patient and tolerant is any religion that simply, I'm going to burn your book. I'm going to burn your followers. I'm going to toss them into the arenas in Rome because that's what the Romans did to the Christians. I'm going to, if you don't believe as I do, death and destruction will reign upon you. Where is the patience? Incredibly, and perhaps not surprisingly, the ways of the goddess, the ancient religion, was much more tolerant. It allowed for differences of opinion. Today's world stresses individuality, the independence of an individual, about achieving your own goals, about becoming this whatever goal or ideal you have. That did not work back when man was evolving. The tribe absolutely needed to depend upon each other. Men needed to depend on women, the children, on the elderly, etc. There was nucleus. There was a tribal identity. And if one person went out, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to, do it my way, he or she did not have the protection of the tribe. In fact, they became a threat to the tribe. In the most ancient civilizations, and I'm talking about when there were tribal communities, people worked together. Independence was not the point of existence in that community. It was being a part of the community, contributing to the community, and bringing your skills to better the life of the people in the tribe. Today's world, the civilized world, says you go and achieve your own thing, and you accomplish your goals, and you do it your way without consideration for the global community. And that's where I have a problem with the civilized world, and why I claim to be uncivilized, and I'm quite proud of it. Right now, the world does not exist united under Christianity or any one religion. And there are people out there who, in their very, very devout beliefs and in their passions, want to unite the world under Christianity or under the Muslim faith or under the Hebrew faith. I mean, there are people who advocate that. But I had to learn English. I had to learn what words mean. And if you are advocating uniting the world under the banner of Christianity, for example, you are advocating a one-world order. And since it does not exist today, you are therefore advocating a new one-world order. Those people who want to unite the world in democracy, any religion, any political institution, are advocates of a one-world order. I will argue that the ways of the goddess in the ancient religion did not do that. It said, we must take this tribe and this tribe and this tribe and work together. A field that is covered with only one kind of flower may be something you can look at in awe, but that is not the way of nature. That is not the world we live in. A field that is filled with every imaginable flower and color, trees and plants, that's what life is about. That is how this world was designed, and if you believe in a creator, that is the way it was created. I do not advocate a new world order, a one world order. I advocate coming together, and the oldest religion on this planet does in fact advocate that, and it is the way of the divine feminine. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Oh, no. Thank you, Robert. Let's see. We have area code 206. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll pose these questions and I'll just see where they go in the universe. One, what about the whole mythology about Lilith? You know the Lilith mythology about how she was Adam's first wife?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then the second question I have is, what about some of the oldest statues religiously built showing reptilian type things? And those are my two questions. And if you can address those, I would love it. Thank you.
I know that we're going to run into a break here momentarily, but what I will say is that when I was in college and university, I wrote a paper in my religious studies when I was pursuing that degree. And in the tarot papers, I in fact stated that those star beings who have had the greatest influence on humankind were what we would refer to as reptilian. And that some of the earliest statues, and there's still one, and I cannot think of the name of the sculptor that resides in the Vatican. I'm sure that you've seen the statues. These are the Ubaid statues of the reptilian female holding the infant. And I will argue that the mythology and the legend, which reaches back to Siberia and beyond, does in fact suggest that there is a reptilian alpha ancestry to humankind. Take a look at what the studies tell us about the human brain. What is at the very center, the very core of the human brain? Exactly.
Absolutely.
All the reptilian. And when we study, and I just really wish I had more time on this, but when we take a look at the myth of Lilith, who was supposed to have been the first wife of Adam, and what the story says and what has been lost is that even in the Bible stories, Lilith said, no, wait a minute, you are not my master. I'm not going to be obedient to you. We share, and you allow me to achieve what I wish to achieve. And she walked away, and then she was demonized. She was vilified. The story of Lilith actually reaches way back into the myths and legends of central Russia, of Siberia and Mongolia. I cannot stress often enough how old the legends and the myths are that come from that area. And I will argue that the Siberian myths, Mongolian shamanism, the central steppes of Russia, and the Garden of Eden, it actually resides. It can actually be found in the Siberian steppes with the Mongolian people. So what you're touching on, Lilith and the reptilian female, are absolutely what I discussed 30 years ago and further in our papers, and there is evidence to this day that suggests we have a reptilian ancestry. I generally have a strong disagreement with most of what is being presented out there. For example, if we can leave the religion issue aside, the concept of Lilith and the reptilian female and the divine feminine has often been portrayed as a New Age phenomenon, that it is the New Age standard and the discipline. And I will tell you that I disagree very strongly with most of the New Age philosophies and religions and their ways, simply because they are male-created, they are male-oriented, and they're male-dominated. when we come back from break, I would be happy to discuss, for example, the philosophy of, well, you should be in balance. You should balance the masculine and the feminine. I think that's extraordinarily dangerous and suppressive of what a woman should be.
Well, I think we women need to be nurturing. That's what we actually are. And we need to be caretakers.
Yeah, I don't dispute that. Here's the problem I have. When people say you're in balance, one has to look at what the word means. When you're in balance, you have equal amounts of two different things. When people say you should be, the New Age philosophy, you should be, your masculine and your feminine should be in balance, I absolutely disagree wholeheartedly. If you were supposed to be in balance, you would have been born a hermaphrodite, but you're born a woman. And so what I would say, if there's any philosophy that says you'll be happy when you're in balance, the word balance says you're going to be equally happy and equally unhappy. My advice, and what I would strongly suggest to any woman listener, don't seek to be in balance, you're male and you're female. Pursue what you are. Pursue the fire that makes you a woman. That's the solution. Balance, I absolutely disagree with.
I would question your definition of balance.
I would just simply look in the dictionary.
And the reason, well, no, I'm not going to go to Webster, some Brit. I'm not going to allow Webster to define my world.
Well, if you're going to assign your own values, then there's absolutely nothing I can say. When you assign your own values to a word, which is what a lot of people do, then it's your perspective and it's your world. But I am subject to the dictionary. I'm subject to scholarly research, and if you want to define things your way, there's nothing I can say.
I would say that balance for a female, in my experience, is to nurture and love. We make art. We grow stuff. This is our nature. This is what we do.
I have no dispute with that.
Yeah.
None. Let me do it this way. Let me tell you this. I think that the future of humankind lies in the hands of women. I think that men have been running this place for some time, and it's been screwed up. It's been messed up. And I'm Native American, and I have for the longest time been pursuing a path that leads us to 2012. I'm certain that you're aware of the prophecies and all that. And what I'm hoping to do in the next 2 years is to get some women, a special woman or women to stand up and begin to take positions of leadership. And I'm not talking about feminism. I'm not talking about being the equal of men. I'm talking about being better than men, about surpassing what men have been able to do, and they have. But I am going to suggest to you that 2012 should be the beginning of a new era when women take the lead. And you know what? You can't change the world right now. You can't replace the senators and the Republicans and the politicians. They're in office right now. There's nothing that you can do about that. Women can't go out there and clean up the oil spill that occurred in the Gulf.
Working on it. Working on it.
Let me make this one point, and I'll grant you the time.
Okay, sorry.
The future of humankind lies in the hands of women, and I absolutely believe that what women have brought to this world in a natural state, what is within their hearts and what's within their souls, is what has been missing for the last couple of thousand years. And I am attempting to say, please, a woman or women, stand up, and by the year 2012, take the information that I've got, take this, and do something with it. And the best way to change the world is by changing the way people believe, by changing the way people think. And that is very simply and basically religion. It's about faith. It's about a way of life. I hope that the old ways, the ancient ways of the goddess, and all of the native prophecies that say return to the old ways, it is about returning to the ways where women not only contribute, but they give us the guidance because of what is within them. And so I am an advocate of a woman somewhere standing up and taking the lead, because I'm going to tell you, if there is a ceremony, a ritual, and with the greatest of respect, ladies and gentlemen who are of Druid faith or New Age faith or Wicca, which I think are some of the oldest, they are closest to the oldest religions in the world, I'm going to tell you what I have found. There should never be a man leading any ritual, any ceremony, any celebration. It should be led by a woman. That's what we need. And so I am supportive of what you're saying about women, and I will even go further and say there's more. My fear, however, is that women will consider the concept of being in balance, and by definition, being both masculine and feminine is not right. Be what you are today. Pursue the fire that makes you a woman. Thank you for allowing me that time.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, if you had another question, go ahead.
May I?
Yes, please.
All right. I'm going to go on to my old standard of the RH negative thing. So the theory goes that rhesus monkeys is where we evolved from. But there are some of us, and I happen to be one of them, that don't have the rhesus monkey a.k.a. called positive blood in my bloodstream. So I'm curious if you would potentially consider this something that came from outer space or something or other. I don't know. I don't know where it comes from. I just know I have it.
Okay, I've always taken the position that humankind is not born naturally evolved from the creatures of this planet. There was an intervention. There was an injection of something that is beyond what we would call natural animalistic traits and behaviors, bloods, etc. There was a divine intervention. That is the only way that we can explain the way that humankind has evolved and why we are different. In fact, what I would go even further and say is that there wasn't just one intervention by one type of star beings with certain characteristics and traits or blood types if they were physical, but there were multiple. And so I'm going to suggest that there are human beings on this planet who are descended, for example, from the stars of Sirius or from the stars of Orion, the stars of Alpha Centauri or Cygnus. I mean, it's a remarkable constellation. And so I believe that that we human beings have the star stuff from many, many different places. You know, what's remarkable to me is that, there are scientists and others who talk about where there can't be alien life out there, there are no extraterrestrials, and I'm going to say just because you haven't found it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The coelacanth is a fish from prehistoric times that for 2 million years was said it didn't exist until they found somewhere off the coast of China. In fact, they've now found a little organism called a Locifera. And this Locifera does not use oxygen to power its body. And more amazing than anything, it has no mitochondria. That is the very battery, the power of life. And this Locifera, this little organism which exists on Earth in some of the most ungodly places, dark places where there's no oxygen, they live. And so what I'm saying is that there is alien life that exists on our planet that does not even remotely come close to what we consider to be life. And so you may very well, and I think many of the listeners in your audience may very well have a blood type, even a physical type. There may be something about the organs in your body. There may be something about your makeup that is radically different from what is called the normal or the average human population has. And so I absolutely agree with you. I do not. Darwin's theory of evolution really doesn't apply to humankind. A lot of people think that evolution means, well, it's getting better, it's getting progressively better. That is not the case. Evolution simply says that you're adapting. And I absolutely agree with you. There was star contact, and you may very well have something in you that is very rare. One last quick comment. Right now, the best explanation, the one that's accepted by people like Stephen Hawking and many of the best scholars on our planet, They're suggesting that life began on this earth because of something that is called panspermia. And that means that there were meteorites or comets or gases that hit the Earth's atmosphere, settled in, and they took root, and that's how life began. And that's perhaps where life itself or even humankind began. The only problem with panspermia and the way the scholars present it is they seem to think it's not happening today. If it happened 1 million years ago or 10 million years ago, it's happening today. And there are new life forms that are being spawned every single second that comet or a meteorite strikes the atmosphere. There's a new life form. There's such a thing as that exobiology where they're finding new creatures all the time. The stories about the chupacabra or the centaurs or the unicorns.
Just go under the water. Just go under the water. Just go. I mean, it is so amazing. You know, the octopi. You know, I mean, just imagine what is underneath the life.
Exactly. I've many, many times said that the scientists clearly admit that they can only address 4% of the universe and the world around us. 96% is dark stuff and dark matter, and yet they have the arrogance to say that these creatures or these entities or star beings or magic or shamanism or sorcery and none of those things can exist. I find that remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. The arrogance of a statement like that. What's under the water? Who knows? I think it's just remarkable what is out there and what we don't know. And I'll tell you what again, I apologize, but you know what? If there's going to be connection with the stars, if we're ever going to return to our rightful place in the heavens, a woman is going to make that connection.
Well, how do we do that? Cool. How do we do that?
Okay, I actually have a suggestion, and you know,
I'm open.
I have had the experience, and I'm sure that you have to. There are numerous people that are out there telling, this is a problem, this is a conspiracy, this is what they're doing, and they're always causing a problem. And I liken this to the analogy of the man who stands outside my house and he says, cockroaches, cockroaches, you've got nothing but cockroaches, and your roof is falling down and all this. Okay, fine. Maybe you're right. And if there is a problem, I want to know what the solution is. And so you're going to find tons of speakers that will tell you these are the problems. And I'm pointing out, and I'm telling you there is a problem. Men are in control. And I'm going to suggest there is a solution. Women should be in control. And the best way, the easiest way, the way that I think is going to work is by returning to the ways of the goddess, what is known as ancient shamanism, and what can be practiced in your home, in your bedroom, with your family or your loved ones, or out in the field behind your house, or out on a mountain peak when you're all alone. I think that there is a way to change things, and it begins with women acknowledging, number one, they have the fire, and they have the potential, and they're the ones that are going to make it happen. I can't do it. What I hope to do with my work is to try to encourage you, listener, please, ma'am,
I'm right
something
here.
with what I'm trying to convey
but I'm
to you.
laughing at you. I have to laugh
I recently conducted a workshop, and I had some women who came over, and I said, look, here's the work, here's the research. These are the ceremonies, the rituals. These are the ways of the ancient goddess. Let's start putting them into practice, but you have to do it. I can only consult. I can only tell you what it was and what they did. And so, you know, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I have studied a lifelong time looking at what the answers are to the problems that we have. And the solution, oversimplified, is a woman.
The more you talk, the more I have questions for you.
We do have a few callers, but, you know, he's going to be on in a couple more weeks. Well, thanks for calling in.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. We have a couple callers on the line. Thank you so much for your patience. My goodness. Wow. Let's, you know, we got about a minute or so, so let's, here we go. Area code 519. Welcome to the show.
Maybe I'm on. I'm 928, but I'll go. Can you hear me?
I'm dyslexic tonight. Area code 9. I recognize that beautiful voice. How you doing tonight, Tobias?
I'm doing great, and I'm really enjoying listening to Robert tonight, trying to be a icebreaker here on the planet and broach the subject of bringing the divine feminine back to us so we can balance ourselves. I wanted to just say, Robert, I resonate completely with your, it's time to help the feminine come back into her power so we can have a balanced creation. And lots of times I try to speak directly in the groups we do to the woman's heart and say, we're waiting on you to step up here a little bit, as well as the men. But I wanted to ask you, do you feel and see the time in the future, and what would that look like when the man and the woman are back to balance and we are cooperating? Can you speak a little bit about dreams and hopes for the future? Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words, and you're precisely correct in what you were saying. The ancient ways of the goddess, the old religion, was dependent very heavily on a male who best manifested the masculine divine and a female who best manifested the feminine divine. So there does have to be a balance of these two entities, of these two beings. But the man must be a man and the woman must be a woman. Now, the trick in this, and the future does depend upon us heavily having that balance on earth. Again, not within the beings, not within the people, but that a woman is a woman and a man is a man. Perhaps the best way to explain where I come from, it comes from an old Hopi story that I grew up with, Hopi Native American. And basically it said that a man is the spark. He is the one that provides that little spark that causes a woman to explode and just go soaring into the heavens and becoming a bright dancing star. That is our task, to be the spark that makes her become a star. And once she does that, then she will reach back and she will bring us with her. And so the ancient ways of the goddess don't say, dismiss completely the masculine divine, get rid of man, and that's not what it says. What it says is, and this time I'll just focus on the male aspect, be a man. Okay? Now, what are the skills? What are the natural, innate characteristics of a man? He's protective. He is strong. He is able to confront challenges. He probably has a better way to put the nuts and bolts together, but it's the woman who has the better ideas. So our task is to enable a woman to accomplish what is innately inside her. That is our future, the balance of the divine male and divine female in two entities. And so that's our future, and with apologies, if we don't get there, humankind is doomed. I many times get asked to talk about save the earth, save the planet, and I have to tell you, the earth has gone through all kinds of disruptions and chaos, volcanoes and ice ages and meteorite storms and solar storms. The world is going to survive. What we should be addressing is save humankind. And the 2,000 plus years that we have been focusing on the male and the masculine divine, we need to, I'm not going to say endeavor to balance, ourselves. I'm saying we need to put a lot of emphasis, a lot of time, and a lot of effort into the feminine divine, into developing the female fires in order to even just bring us back to where we can have a balance between male and female on the planet. So I agree with you, and I apologize to all those that may be upset by this, but, as Christy said, believe what you wish. And if you resort to name-calling and those kind of things, well, simply means you can't address the issues, you can't address the argument.
Right on, Robert. And I wanted to say something that I found really interesting lately, Spirit shared with me, just clear evidence of this unbalance is 7% of humans today are born as left-handed people, and 93% are born as right-handed people. Now, if that's not a direct, concrete symptom of the feminine being that 7%, in a sense, right and left brains, I would suggest that when we become all balanced again, maybe we'll have half and half in the earth. And I think there's a merging of mother religions and father religions on the earth right now. And the new thing, we can barely see it yet, but I know that's what the earth is trying to prod us towards, and that's what Father God is trying to prod us towards. Thanks so much, Christy and Robert, and I'll let someone else talk.
Tobias, thanks so much for calling in. Have a good night. Okay, our next call tonight is Tracy from Canada. Thanks so much for your patience. How you doing tonight, Tracy?
I'm doing good, Christy. Hello, Robert. I just wanted to say that I've actually checked out one of Robert's sites and read the Terra Chronicles, and, wow, it resonates so much with me. I've been sitting in the chat room tonight and realized just even bringing up this issue bothers people so much. And, you know, my background is Mohawk and on Dad's side Haitian, so if I said what I thought the tree and the serpent and the woman meant, I probably, you know, I'm seeing villagers with torches in my head. So I won't even bring that up.
Next to me.
Yeah, well, we can go together, honey.
Right.
But, you know, I have to kind of tread softly on that, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, because I think it's completely different than this Lucifer idea and stuff. And even if there was a being, I don't think it was bad. But anyway, my question was, we seem to have been ripped so far apart from each other, Robert, men and women. And there seems to be one story, and I love reading the old stories from all over the world, of some major upheaval in our basic being, our basic beliefs. And I was wondering, what do you think it was that made us stop being able to just be with each other? I don't think we were always fighters. I don't think we were always killers. I don't think we were always so adversarial. And I don't think there was always a big question on what men should be and what women should be. You just were. I'm not particularly nurturing, so, you know, I kind of blow everything that lady said. I have a son, and I thank God that he's made it, because I'm not good at that kind of stuff. But he's a wonderful man now, and I did okay. But, you know, I don't really question what my role is. I just am what I am, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. So, you know, that's my only question. I want to know what you thought caused this rift.
Okay, but after I tell you what you are, and you're a beautiful, gentle, loving goddess.
Well, that too. I can't disagree with that.
So stop beating yourself up, okay? And I have seen your very warm, nurturing side. So I'm not going to let you get away with that.
It's fair. It's just not, you know.
Okay. All right. I won't interrupt.
Well, I want to thank you, you know, for your very kind words, and I don't disagree. Actually, there have been numerous studies, and I'm going to cite a couple of books. I'm going to recommend a couple of books now. Studies by anthropologists and experts who have taken a look at the evolution of humankind. And there is a general consensus, and I'm talking about scholars who have spent lifetimes looking at meteorology and, besides climate, the famines and foodstuffs and all that has assisted humankind in its evolution. And almost overwhelmingly, they have come to the conclusion that the single greatest chaotic event that has fated us to be as separate as we are as men and women, and what has separated the tribes, that one event was the agricultural era, transferring from leaving the hunter-gatherer status to domesticated agricultural farmers. And where there was a greater equality, and even to this day, anthropologists have studied primitive societies where they still remain as hunter-gatherers, and they find a great deal more cooperation and equality and happiness and satisfaction in that kind of a society as opposed to agriculture. I'm going to recommend two books very quickly. One is called Sex and War. It's written by Malcolm Potts and Thomas Hayden, and it's quite a study. But basically what it does is it analyzes what the causes of war really are, what they have been in our most recent past. And one of the solutions that they come up with, surprise, surprise, is that women should be given a greater position of leadership, a greater position of authority and power than they have today. So this isn't a Native American who is just rambling on about myths and legends. I'm telling you that there are anthropologists and scholars who have actually undertaken these studies, and their solution to war: give women greater power and greater positions of leadership. And the other one, which will give you an idea as to why we have separated as men and women, the other book that I'm going to recommend is called Sex at Dawn. It's by Christopher Ryan and Cacilda, Jetha, Sex at Dawn. And what this study does, and again, it's also relatively complicated and difficult to read. However, what it says is that in our earliest states of tribal existence, we were equal when we were hunters and gatherers. And when we became agricultural farmers dependent on the land as opposed to dependent upon ourselves and other people in our tribe, that changed everything. And that is the one chaos that we have never recovered from.
That makes so much sense. You know, as soon as we started taming the land, that even sounds like the wrong path. You know, that's where greed starts. That's where coveting other people's stuff comes.
Exactly.
If you don't move around and go and get. Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah, I feel that. That makes a lot of sense.
When farmers could not control the wild, they decided to destroy it. Mm-hmm. And in destroying the wild, they destroyed our very natural existence, our natures.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very good point. It's amazing.
Really
Why do you think we have this tendency to want to control everything? I mean, God himself, herself, Mother Nature, what have you? And now we own the air and rain, or the military thinks so.
I don't think we do, Christy. That's the other thing. I don't think this is our natural thing. I think something happened to us, or we were manipulated by something that made this happen. I absolutely agree. I can't see us just saying, you know what, let's not move around anymore. Let's just stay here, and we'll stay here whether or not there's food, and we won't go hunt anymore. Let's just stay here. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
No sense.
And I guess the big question is what or whom were we manipulated
Well, you know,
by?
I think aliens.
And how.
You know, that's me.
Okay, wow, we just have a few short minutes left, but we do have another caller. This is area code 520. Oops, did I do that right? I did do that right. Area code 520, welcome to the show.
Well, good evening. I just was listening as I was driving home, but all I'll say is that, we better figure out how to get along, or there ain't going to be nothing left to be along, is there?
Absolutely agree.
Well, what I find fascinating in my life study is of the male-female, that the women have to become men, and I see that as a spirit man, and the spirit doesn't have sex, and we just all have to come up in our spirit and become spirit beings and get out of being human beings, I think, and we'll find ourselves getting along a lot better. Thanks for letting me slip in at the last minute.
Thank you. And you know, I do agree. The whole point of shamanism is to reach beyond these physical bodies and this real world and reach into that 96% other world that our scientists admit is out there. And we do need to go beyond labeling something as male and female. However, the closest thing that we have to manifesting the divine to date is the female, the feminine divine. I also want to comment on Tracy's words about a lot of the experts and scholars disagree. Oh, I absolutely do too. On my library, I have over 5,000 reference books in it, and I disagree with most of them. These two are fairly recent. The books I recommended, Sex at Dawn and Sex and War. And for the most part, I tend to agree with their evidence and their conclusions. There are, on the other hand, numerous other scholarly books that I absolutely disagree with. What I would say in parting is, to those people who absolutely and vehemently disagree with me, what I would ask these people to do is, instead of, calling me a name or even attacking Christy, what I would say, if it makes you happy, call me a name, but here's what you should do. You should get on the phone. You should get on your website. You should send out emails. You should let everybody know that there is this horrific man out there who is suggesting that the future of humankind lies in the hands of women. Tell them that there is this very evil Native American out there who is saying that we need to empower women and to give them leadership and that we should take advantage of the fire of women. Call me a name, but call everybody you know. Tell them to not go to the website. Tell them to absolutely listen to nothing that I say, because I am advocating the leadership and the change of going to a world where women have not only a stronger part, but have a leadership part. So call me a name, but tell everybody you know. Tell them, go away. Leave him alone. You don't want to listen to him because he's promoting womanhood.
Robert, they can include Russ Dove in that also, because the fact of the matter is how can we say we respect life and disrespect the giver of life as we do? It's heinous.
It is
wrong.
It's a travesty.
It's just wrong.
Absolutely heinous. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so at any rate, yeah, it's a subject that has to be explored and people have to deal with. So, but I'm going to bow out and let you guys finish the show and listen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks so much for calling in. Okay, wow, we made it, and 2 minutes left for the show. Robert, I don't know, maybe we should have you on once a week, or maybe we should try, I don't know. I certainly wasn't expecting a religious debate, and so I apologize to you for any disrespect and negative energy going on. I'm actually kind of surprised at... Well, not kind of. Okay, I'm surprised at the attacks and such. But you know what that means? I think that means we just need to talk more about it.
Absolutely. And if the people who are listening got upset at what little I've spoken about tonight, they haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg. If we are permitted to continue, and I certainly hope that we do so, I want to talk about sacred ecstasy. I want to talk about rituals that have been personified as orgies, but in fact were the celebrations of life, and that the Bible and the men of the Bible have transformed into the ceremonies and the rituals that are at the very foundation of the Bible. So if this is what you found upsetting, then do not come back in a couple of weeks. Again, go away. Tell everybody, do not listen to Christy, and certainly don't allow him to bring that renegade, that nobody who has these concepts. Don't listen to them. But tell everybody, please.
Or not. And while they're running around telling everyone not to listen or not to read the website, well, I'm just going to have to counteract them and, do a little fro and tell pro and ask you to please read the material. And you know what? If you still have questions next week, or you have this urge to want to label someone or this or that, okay, cool. But do us this favor. At least read the material first and have a question or statement, at least based on something that happened here on the show or something we talked about. And I'm not discounting anyone's research and Blavatsky and Rosicrucians and all this other stuff that was brought up in the text chat. Fine. Great, wonderful, but let's try to keep it topic related and once again respectful. Robert, thank you so much. I absolutely love you, and you are just such a trooper. Thank you for hanging in there and spending your time with us and sharing your beautiful wisdom. I really, really appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you who tuned in to the show tonight. Tell a friend. Don't keep it a secret. Have a wonderful evening. Abundant blessings and love to all.